So that's Season 7, the first colour season and the first Pertwee season. It's a far shorter season with only 4 serials and about half the number of episodes of its predecessors. We've also got the Earthbound format with no serials taking place off of Earth, with one featuring a parallel universe but still remains Earthbound. So let's get into the serials and see how well this season held up overall. The season opened with Spearhead from Space, the strongest season opener the show has had so far. It perfectly introduces the new format for the show, alongside the new incarnation and a companion, while reintroducing Unit. Its villain is strong, with it somewhat touching on the dangers of overusing plastic by using it as an evil force. There really are no elements which don't hold up, with its production values feeling very high due to the on-location filming. It's somewhat surprising this came from Robert Holmes after his previous 2 serials, but this serial is by far his best so far, and the perfect opening to this new era. Doctor Who and the Silurians was next, and gave us a serial with a strong message behind it. All the elements of this serial came together to give us a story which makes us root for the villains, as they are the real victims of the story. It makes us look a bit deeper at ourselves for how we treat others who are unlike ourselves. It's a near flawless serial which really showed what the Earthbound format could do for the show. The Ambassadors of Death was a real letdown. Its initial episodes is mostly strong, and the general idea for the plot is great, but it's very slow paced, with a lot of time being spent having to keep itself going. The companion is completely sidelined, and its troubled writing process is worn on its sleeves. Following up the Silurians didn't help the story, but it does give us the iconic Sting, which is something at least. The season ended with Inferno, a serial closer to the Silurians rather than the Ambassadors. It's not perfect, with the final 2 episodes being a bit slow, but it's got a good message behind it, and introduces a unique plot device which gives us a unique view of both our world and the characters who inhabit the show. To rank them, the Ambassadors of Death is in last place. Spearhead from Space is next, but is far closer to 2 than it is to 4. Then we have Inferno, and in first place is Doctor Who and the Silurians, to nobody's surprise. I already called this my favourite serial, and that still stands. I will note though that Spearhead from Space and Inferno are likely to constantly switch up with each other. They're just so close in quality to me. With the shortness of this season, there are less companions than in previous seasons, with only 1, although we do have the Brigadier, who's incredibly prominent. As he's the A returning element, we'll begin with the Brig, who is very strong throughout. Having already been introduced in Web of Fear and then built up in The Invasion, this season really makes him a key part of the show, with him being a lot more fleshed out. He's the face of Unit, with him getting to partake in a lot of action scenes, while also spending time behind a desk, giving orders. The Brig is the only constant from the previous era, due to the new setting, Doctor, and lack of the TARDIS, which makes him very important for keeping the audience on the show's side in the earlier serials. There will be a lot more to him in the next few seasons, but this one does a good job of making him a staple of the show and a fan favourite character. Liz is next up as the only companion, and while that should mean she gets more time in the spotlight, this isn't really the case, with her feeling less important with each serial. She is very prominent in Spearhead, with her acting as the audience avatar, being introduced to the Doctor in Unit, with her getting to show off her scientific nature, which allows her to assist the Doctor. In the Silurian, she is still very prominent, with the last few episodes really allowing her to have plenty of strong moments while acting as the Doctor's assistant, notably with her helping to find the cure and doing other tasks. But from Ambassadors onwards, her presence feels incredibly reduced. Ambassadors has a kidnap for the majority, which really restricts her, and then in Inferno, due to the nature of the story, she is sidelined for her counterpart. Shaw is a good character, but since Inferno would become Liz's last serial, it is unfortunate that she has such little presence in the middle section, but does get some moments in the final one. She does get to help the Doctor in a technical way in all the serials, but without a dumber character around, it means she really didn't work for the show as intended. It is unfortunate that her departure was so sudden, but it's something which couldn't be helped, although she does still stand out against all her predecessors, taking the best from characters like Barbara and Zoe. The Doctor is last up, and this new incarnation makes a strong first impression. He lacks the clown-like nature of 2 and feels like a less rough 1, with him still having a light-hearted nature despite his situation. This incarnation is a lot more action-focused towards the end, which is something we'll see developed, but his technical side is something on display throughout, with him really going back to the scientific roots of the first Doctor, but having a lot more practical knowledge and using it on several occasions. Without the TARDIS, the Doctor also has Bessie, which gives us a combination of humour alongside a different side to him, with him treating her somewhat like the TARDIS. There will be more to say about this incarnation in his next seasons, but what we got here is a strong start to his era. So the Doctor's exile is something I want to discuss as it's a key part of this season, although mostly in the background. There are 2 sides to this, the first being the Doctor's knowledge, as that has been tampered with by the Time Lords, and the other is that of the TARDIS, which is unable to take off now. Beginning with the Doctor's knowledge, that really isn't explored by this season, with it feeling a bit throwaway against the TARDIS itself. He clearly lacks the knowledge to fix the TARDIS for full flight, although he does make attempts. He also seems to be fully aware of who he is and his previous adventures, so what exactly was removed from his memories by the Time Lords is very up in the air. On the TARDIS, that is a bit more complex, as while it fails to take off in Spearhead, it clearly is able to be used when the console is removed and used independently, although it lacks a power source. It's kind of weird to see the console being used without the rest of the ship, and does raise questions as to what exactly is wrong, as presumably the problem the Doctor encountered in Spearhead would still be present if he removed the console, but it isn't. This is clearly to do with it being needed for the plot of Inferno to work, but feels a bit odd. That one moment it doesn't work at all, but by removing the console it does work. It does mean you wonder how the Doctor was planning to travel the universe with just a console, as he couldn't take the power source with him, and was very clearly aware they couldn't hold a charge effectively. This element of the season is not well explored, which doesn't hurt it, but does make you scratch your head when you think about it, although it does give us some great jokes. So Season 7 is a dramatic departure from what has come before. Stranding the Doctor on Earth was a risky decision, but it paid off. The season is mostly strong with only one serial being a mess, but still having a good idea behind it. The short length of it also helps to avoid it being filled with a lot of lackluster serials and making the Earthbound setting feel overused right from the start. It's very different from what has come before, but that works to make the season feel unique, which does strengthen it. And although we are still early in these reviews, I will admit that this is almost certainly my favourite season of the classic era, with it containing my favourite serial of the show and two of the classics. After the somewhat lackluster entry that was the previous season, this one raises the bar back up to where it was in Season 5, which does mean that the next season has a lot of pressure on its shoulders.